prévenir. Yeah, start. I will.
No, I'm going to do it.
Oh, you're going to start.
Good evening, everyone. Before I hand over to the chair of tonight's meeting, may I remind everyone here in the room that we are now live streaming. We politely request that all participants wait until being invited to speak by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand. Once invited to speak, please preface your contribution by stating your name. This will help the mics lock in on the primary speaker and thereby maximise the sound quality for those watching at home. If you're watching at home and wish to participate in tonight's meeting, please turn your video on. If you're just observing, please turn your video off. Unless actively speaking, all those watching the meeting via Zoom should have their mics muted. I will now hand over to tonight's chair, Councillor Goodhine. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Asset Management and Amenities Committee. First of all, welcome to John. Welcome to a member of the public, even Adrian. Do you wish to say anything at this point or wait until later on?
I'm happy to speak now and then leave.
Right.
I can't get the hour and a half back of my life.
Right, well, please. No, because the public stage. Yeah, right, please.
Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
Can I just say I am actually quite sad to be here. And the only reason I'm here is because I don't see things happening that I think should be happening. And so I'm here to once again request that the zip wire comes to the agenda. I was promised it would be on this agenda. It's not on this agenda. I went back, funny enough, Gary, I searched my emails and I found an email from April the 18th last year when I reported the zip wire as being broken. I have a response from an officer, so I can prove that I did that. That is a year ago. It was taken out of action in August, September time. I'm not blaming anybody here, but I want people to think that if you make a member of staff redundant and dump their job on another member of staff, you're not going to get the outcomes that you want. And somebody who's got double the workload. I do know that it is in situ at the moment. I do know there are quotes going in because I happen to see the people walking around doing it. But you have not got another meeting until the end of June, which means that the zip wire is still not going to come to council until the middle of summer. It's well outside delegated budget, so you're not going to be able to get the clerk to delegate anything. And so the zip wire isn't going to be even be looked at. And I find that incredibly sad that 18 months down the line, the most popular piece of equipment is not being repaired. But there's two other bits I want to talk about as well. And one is that you're obviously going to have a meeting of the Parks Working Group, which is an interesting beast, to say the least. I've only met once, although it could have been actually the vehicle that was looking at all these issues. It's a working group, which means that you don't have to have a public agenda, and yet you're going to talk about public consultation. And I just plead with you, please, so that I can put it onto the Friends of Melksham Parks Facebook page, which I've been running for the last 6 years, so that we can get some public interest in it. It's a vitally important thing, so I ask you please to do that. And the other one is I am absolutely incredulous that you are going to have a confidential item on the sculpture in the park. It seems incredible to me to decide on the future of a project to install a sculpture in Century Garden in King George V Park in a confidential session. What are you trying to hide? This feels that Melksham Town Council are trying to hide everything at the moment behind closed doors. And I think it's very sad. And I think the officers haven't got enough support from councillors over certain things. And I do think that their workload is quite ridiculous. And it's no wonder that we actually can't get things done. when their officers have got double the workload that they had a year ago when they were busy anyway. I finished.
Thank you. I can tell you that we have already got 3 quotes for the zip wire repair.
It can't come until the next meeting of this committee, which is the end of June.
But it is in hand.
No, it's not in hand. I'm sorry, Chair. It might be in hand, but the children have not had a zip wire now for a year. That is not good enough. I'm really sorry to have to say it. It's not good enough for Melksham Town councillors.
What's disappointing if we've got the quotes? Why isn't it on today's agenda?
Sorry, John?
I said, what's disappointing if we have got the quotes, why isn't it on tonight's agenda? Because then a decision could be made and we could move on. I'm very sympathetic to the point that's being made. This is what's happening too often in this council.
But anyway,
Okay.
I'm not staying for the rest of your discussions, so I'll leave. Bye. Really nice
Thank
to see
you. You will be hearing from us. Thank you. Right. Okay. Apologies. No, we just need to. Do you know, Kristen?
I haven't received any, Patsy haven't received any.
Right.
You both checked.
Yes, Sue.
Susan Mortimer, I just like to make, you just said it was no apologies.
Patsy, no, Patsy's going to confirm.
Yes, we've received apologies from councillor Rundell and requested that she be substituted by councillor Mortimer.
Right. Thank you. Right, minutes, declarations of interest, rather. Anybody wish to make any declarations that haven't been previously made? No? Okay.
Minutes of the last meeting on February 14th. Is everybody happy that these are an accurate record, or would anybody like to raise anything
From those minutes? No? So I propose from the chair that we accept those. Can I have a seconder, please? Claire? Thank you. All in favour, please? Thank you. That's unanimous. I need to sign those. Yeah. Okay. Item 4. Update on public toilets. So if I can hand over to Head of Operations, Hugh, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We've got 3 items really here. Basically, it's an update on progress so far, but the Bath Road toilets, the roof replacement is now complete. Scaffolding is down. Guttering's been replaced. I've yet to get the downpipe protector, but that should be arriving next week. And we'll secure the downpipes from being pulled off. 2 cubicles are functional. I'm getting a price in to get deep clean, and then we should be in a position to open them. I'm awaiting a quote from ID Verdi for the cleaning, and the only thing I've got to chase is the lease back from our solicitor. That's Bath Road. Eco losing Cajun.
Can I ask a question on Bath Road? Do you want to take them at the end, or?
I don't mind.
So the roof is now repaired.
Yeah.
Last time I asked when it was going to be opened, I was told they'd be opened as soon as the roof was repaired.
Yeah,
But now we need to deep clean them. So
I'd rather deep clean them.
I'm just worried that every time the thing that's holding up opening them is dealt with, there's now something else holding up opening them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was sat there as you were giving your report thinking, yes, if all we're waiting on is a downpipe, we can open them without a downpipe. And then you say, but I want to deep clean them and we've got to get a price for deep cleaning. And I'm just, when are we going to get these open?
I would say, John, we commenced the 9th of May. Now, I've put 2nd here, but that was a bank holiday. I will get them open as soon as I can. The key, the unknown is the solicitor, and I will be chasing that.
Solicitor, in terms of
For the lease. Yeah, the lease bank.
right, so what for Wiltshire Council?
It is from our solicitor.
Okay. But that's going to stop us opening, because surely we must have had something in place for us to be able to undertake all the works.
We could probably, I need to speak to the council on it first.
We are talking about a short timescale.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So we commence 2nd of May.
9th, but if I can get them open earlier, I will.
Can I ask that we insert the year after that in the minutes?
23, 2.
Of course, John.
Okay, Ecoluz, the groundworks inspection is complete. I don't have the full price, but they should be very close to the £15,000 each mark. They can utilise a bit of some of the services from the pavilion. Plan to site them if you're looking at the pavilion from the field on the right-hand side. Yeah, we haven't got the formal quote back yet. Predicted opening back end of June. Marketplace toilets. So, yeah, this year. Yeah.
On the Ecoluz,
Yeah,
I just want to check the right hand of the pavilion is where there's quite a lot of existing foundation stones, etc., in place.
the old cricket nets and what have you. It's in very poor condition, and it will come up straight away. The builders had a look at it.
They dug down, have they?
They haven't dug down, but it's very clear that you'd be able to get straight into it. He was very happy that he could do it.
So is the concrete being removed?
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a new will go. So it'll be sited on a pad.
and will all the concrete go so that it's
No, not all of it.
It will be tidied up, the edges. And
Yeah.
Would it be possible to get a quote for removing the rest of the concrete at the same time?
That's not.
Because it is unsightly, isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
Or indeed putting some form of paving down for access to the Ecoluz, so that you're not walking across a muddy path to get there.
That was included. Yeah, there will be a track to them. Yeah.
And there's a bike rack going to go up by there as well.
Yeah. I didn't want to put that in before the lose, just in case, but yeah.
The 5 jobbies.
That's
and
it.
the toolkit.
Yeah.
And the extra camera covering the new loos will also then cover the bike kit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your contribution, John.
Marketplace toilets, last bit. The doors now closed properly, and the only thing to do then is get the signage and the doors painted up.
Are they on the new timing now?
No, not yet. Not until I've got the signage done. Okay, that's the lose. Any other questions?
So-
Sorry, Susan Whiteman. I just wondered about the Church Street toilets. Are we doing anything with those?
No plans to at this stage.
Thank you. Thanks, Hugh. All right. If there are no more questions, go on to item 5, the memorial bench and donations policy. Right, this, I might need a little bit of help with this. This has got a little bit complicated, but we've made some really good progress. So in your information pack, you'll see the original quote, the quote the policy that we considered at the last meeting, and various suggestions have been made, or an addition has been made to that. There is then a version that incorporates comments that councillors made after having it circulated, which is what we agreed we'd do at our last meeting. So that you have that version. You have that version without the tracking of the changes and with the tracking of the changes. So we've got something in front of us that feels as if it addresses the points raised. But does anybody have any comments to make on the result now from reading through the suggestions? John.
Thank you, Chair. John, can I just clarify, because unfortunately I came straight from something else, I didn't have time to grab my iPad. The version that's being circulated with the track changes on, is that the version I sent to you?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Excellent. So I just wanted to point out a couple of the things that I had made in this rewrite of the original draft policy that I think are important, because some of them make pertinent changes to some of the key points in the original policy as circulated by the clerk that came to full council. The first one is that it takes away the option of sponsoring an existing bench at a lesser cost to sponsoring a new bench, and instead inserts that if there is an existing bench that is in good repair, where somebody would want to sponsor a bench because there might be a very personal connection to the location it's at. Someone might, for instance, have a very personal connection to a bench that's in the Prince of Wales Garden and therefore want one there, and there's not space to put a new one in. Rather than creating a two-tier system where you could buy a plaque or buy a bench, I've suggested that you could sponsor an existing bench and have the plaque put on it, but the money you give for a bench could be used by the council to put a bench somewhere else in the parish where perhaps we feel a bench is needed, but it would not necessarily be one that someone would want as a memorial bench. For instance, when we did the age-friendly consultation, there was a lot of requests for benches along Eastern Way, the new bypass running up from Snowbury or from Spa Road up to Sandridge Road. But it's highly unlikely somebody would want to spend £1,000 on a memorial bench overlooking the roundabout on Eastern Way. So that way we would be able to use that funding to go to that. Another substantive change to the policy was the removal of the 10-year element that was there. The original motion or proposal that came to full council said you'd sponsor a bench and after 10 years we could turf your thing off and sell it to someone else or whatever. I find that concept abhorrent. I have to be honest with you. I think that it's far too short a period. If we ask someone to buy a bench, then it should be there for the natural lifetime of that bench. We're asking people to buy a bench and give it to the town council. Once we've bought a bench and given it to the town council, it's the town council's property, and it's our responsibility to maintain that bench as we would any other, including in having it under our insurance policy. So if a bench comes to the end of its natural life through wear and tear, and we all see those, then the bench comes to the end of its natural life through wear and tear, and it is removed and potentially replaced with another. But what we don't do is after 10 years say your bench, you know, the memorial plaques coming off of that. I certainly know the memorial bench I've got for my mother, which is down in West Bay, is now 13 years old. And it would be horrifying if I was to go down there and find a different plaque on that bench now, because the council had thought, I bought that bench, or my family bought that bench, we gave it to North Dorset, whatever, whatever district council it was, and it is there for the duration that that bench survives. And it should be the same with the benches. We are not going to be so inundated with people wanting to give us £1,000 to install benches that we're going to run out of spaces for benches to go very, very quickly. So I really don't see this as being an issue, but the thought of certainly somebody who put a bench in and for a loved one, and in their natural lifetime, that bench was taken away through anything other than wear and tear, I think would just be so wrong as to be indescribable. And then the only other substantial changes I think I made, unless I'm missing something, Patsy, was just that whole issue about ownership of the bench. The bench became the property of the town council, and the town council would be expected to maintain and insure it, as we do all of our benches. But those are two quite critical changes to the original policy that I think it's only right to highlight to council.
Yeah, thanks, John. I don't think you need to do any convincing there. I think there was support when you mentioned this at the last meeting, unless anybody's got any comment to make on John's comments. I'd like to ask a question then. These benches could have a life of even up to 30 years. So are we saying then that that plaque, commemorative plaque, would be effective could be effective for up to 30 years? And that obviously means that that's a bench that can't be taken on by anybody else during that period.
That's what I have rewritten the policy to say, yes. If you're buying a bench and giving it to the town as a memorial bench, then for the lifetime of that bench, it should show the memorial that you've put on there. Oh, sorry, that is the one other change I did make as well. Actually, I'll come back to that in a sec. So, but in answer to your question, yes, if that bench lasts, you know, as you say, it should last between 20 and 30 years, unless someone burns it down or does some. If they burn it down or whatever, it's covered by our insurance. We know that. We had one got burnt down only a year ago, didn't we? We claimed it on the insurance to have it replaced. If it dies through natural wear and tear, which all things will do in due course, that's fine. Nobody can argue that it's worn out, but to have the bench there, the one that you've paid for, and to have someone come along and pried off your memorial plaque and stuck another one on, the idea just it's absolutely abhorrent to me. The one other thing I did make a change on was the original policy said it could include somebody's name and their date of year of birth and year of death only. I've changed it so it could include a comment as well if you wanted, just that would need to be approved by the clerk, so that what we wouldn't have is a situation of somebody wanting to put something inappropriate on the plaque. So it'd have to be signed off. But I mean, the most important bit, again, I can only speak from the heart about my mum's one here, isn't her name that's on it, it's the message that we as a family thought about and wrote on that appears under her name, between her name and the dates. So.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's been included. Yes, I wasn't casting any doubt on that length of time, but of course, none of us know what the take-up of these will be. We may never get to a stage where there's still spaces where there are no spaces for any further benches, so it may be academic anyway. But if we get to that point, then the answer is, yeah, you know, those options are now.
But the policy does give space for that, Chair, because let's say, for instance, somebody wanted to put a memorial bench in KGV, and we said we don't have space for any more benches in KGV. They could adopt one of the existing benches. If it's coming towards the end of its life, it could be replaced. If it's still got good life in it, they can have that bench, and then we'd have that money to spend putting benches in somewhere else where people won't want to pay for a memorial bench to go. And sometimes there is a need for benches, but not a want to sponsor them there. So this is an opportunity for us to be able to meet the need that our community from time to time identifies to us, out of a pot that we can build up.
Yeah, that's assuming that all the benches in KGV aren't already taken.
Well, I think we're well away from having to worry about that.
So the question is then, right, okay, so, right, we can, an option then is to approve the revised version of the memorial bench and donations policy as delegated by full council, or to recommend the councillor's version for approval by full council. So I would assume that it's the latter. Yes, so do I have a proposer then for the revised version, which includes the comments John has reminded us of? Sue, and then Tom. Right, Sue, so you propose that, Sue? And Tom seconds?
Can I just ask a clarification, Chair, just to make the version that I submitted, have any additional amendments been made to that since I submitted it? Because you said it reflected councillors' feedback.
I looked the day I published the agenda and didn't see any then.
So, yeah, I just wanted to check just in case.
I haven't looked since, obviously.
Yeah.
And nothing we've said tonight adds anything.
So that's two, does it? Right, okay. Could I have a show of hands, please, for support or otherwise?
The councillor's version to go to full council.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's it. It becomes a policy now.
Yep. Okay, so that's unanimous.
Full council delegates it to this committee to approve it.
Right, thank you. That's
In our packet says, or to recommend the councillor's version for approval by full council.
and that's what is recommended and being proposed.
No, that's.
So, am I-
It says to approve the revised version of the memorial bench and donations policy as delegated by full council, or to recommend the councillor's version for approval by full council.
right, okay. So we're voting, yeah, you're right. So we're voting to recommend the revised version for approval by full council then.
Sorry, why do we need to do that?
Good question then.
So,
Unless I'm reading it completely wrong.
No, you're not. As expense,
Yeah.
whether it should be done like that is the question.
So is it saying if we do what we're told, we're allowed to do it? If we're not doing what we're told, it's not come back again, so we can be told off.
I don't think it was meant like that, and I
No.
think someone's written it slightly different from others.
right. So how do we resolve that then?
It basically, it depends on your interpretation of the resolution that was made by Asset Management on the 19th of April. Because the resolution,
Full council.
sorry, my full council at the meeting on 19th of April, that resolution was to amend the bench policy to include the amendments stipulated in the minutes of that meeting, and then asset management would have delegated authority to approve that amended policy.
I don't think you'll find there's a single councillor present who won't say that everything that is in that revised version that I included, and if you remember, when I came to you with that revised version, I was incredulous that the new version of the policy that had been distributed to councillors did not include any of the things that had been asked for in that meeting at full council.
So, yep, so we'll approve that version now then, yes?
Yes.
Yep, okay, so you're happy with that, Jack?
Yeah.
So,
We just voted.
so proposed by Sue, seconded by Tom,
Unanimous.
and it was a unanimous vote, yep. Okay, thank you, sorry about that confusion. Are you happy, John?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. King George V. Yes. Hugh, do you want
Splash
to
pad.
take over that?
We opened on Friday and it was well attended. Saturday was well attended. I wasn't there on Saturday. I was there Sunday and Monday. Not so good, but a little bit weather dependent. So at least we got it open and people were enjoying themselves, which is good. We opened a couple of weeks earlier this year compared with last year. Cost of utilities has gone up. So this is under the financial implications bit. And that's both electricity, water, not so much. And so I've put together a schedule of opening hours in advance for approval today. I'm looking at essentially every school holiday day and every weekend. We're open 10 till 5. And during term time when the kids are at school, we open 1 till 5 in the afternoons when it's warmer, and attendances have shown that people do generally attend more in the afternoon than earlier in the morning.
So, Sue?
Thank you. The first point, sorry, Sue Mortimer, the first point is Monday, the 2nd of May is a bank holiday. You've got that open 1 till 5.
Yeah, 10 to 5.
And the other point really, if we're going to try and get people to use the cafe, wouldn't it be more sensible to have it open in the morning as well? So that, you know, people might stay for lunch then. I mean, they're not going to be going in the cafe at 1 o'clock for lunch, are they? They'll have the lunch before they come. To me, it would make sense to open in the mornings as well every day if you're going to get the cafe open.
I actually agree with you, actually open 11, something like that on a, but with the proviso that the cafe is open, because otherwise you are, you're not going to get the turnover or of numbers you expect, because people want food, drink, toilets, everything. The toilets might be there, but they will want more if they're arriving at 11 o'clock. And 11 o'clock, the sun's nearly at its zenith as such, so it should be warm enough. You don't want to open at 9 o'clock in the morning, you just won't get anyone there. I agree with that, Sue. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Tom?
Thank you, Tom Price. Yeah, I would love the splash pad to be open as much as possible. Be open all day, every day would be absolutely ideal. I do think we need to be aware and bear in mind that this is an assumption. Maybe I could be, Hugh can clarify here. I would assume if we change the hours by 3 hours per day, every single day, that'd be quite a staffing commitment. And forgive me if I'm wrong, this training for the splash pad is actually quite difficult to actually get forward, I believe. So I'd be more than happy to push to have longer opening hours, but I think we need to be prepared to potentially take on more staff. That'd be something we need to bear in mind if we were to push more opening hours. That's all.
Thank you, Jack. I would point out that it's not just staffing cost, it's electricity consumption as well. So, John.
Thank you. Of course, we're not talking about increasing hours, we're talking about reducing hours here. Because last year it was open all day, every day, throughout the summer. Closed when the weather was inclement, yes, but open otherwise. And that is, of course, what our taxpayers have paid for. And that's what we sold to them when we asked them to support the investment in this. So I would be really disappointed if we start cutting the hours that this free to access facility for our residents is available for. My understanding is, I don't know the electric costs, so I haven't had the benefit of those papers, but my understanding staff-wise was that's what we've employed the park wardens for. They are seasonal staff. They don't need to be present at the splash pad for the duration it is open. They need to go and run a test once an hour during the day. And the idea of the park wardens was that they are based at the park throughout the day, undertaking work there. So going and doing those tests shouldn't be an issue. So I can accept that there may be additional costs we're facing with electricity because of the spike in electricity prices. But I don't accept that there's additional costs for staff because they have always been factored into the cost for running the splash pad. And even the budget that went through for this financial year, that went through in December for this financial year, that budget did not include any reduction in staffing in the amenity team at all, against either the proposed budget from officers or previous budgets. So we shouldn't have a staffing issue in terms of having enough money to pay for the staff to run the splash pad. And that's what actually we've said to our residents we're going to do. So I would be aghast if we actually reduce the access to that facility for our residents this year. The question I was going to ask on the splash pad was actually, can we please make sure that we have adequate staff there and adequate time before opening? Because last year it got embarrassing the number of times we were putting messages out saying, oops, we won't be opening to the splash pad till late today because of X, Y, or Z, which normally was because someone had turned up to do it at 10 o'clock when it was due to open and identified a challenge. Those challenges will be there, they're genuine, but if we turn up at 9 o'clock and identify them, more often than not, we can solve them before we're due to open at 10. And I would just stress again, this is a key resource that our residents pay for. And they're paying for us to have it open, not paying to look at it closed.
Thank you. Hugh will no doubt be able to respond to that, but Claire?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask, I get the reduced hours when the kids are at school. Do we know, do you have any figures of how much splash pad was used, why the schools were actually open? Because obviously there's an awful lot of children in nursery school as well as primary school.
Yeah, during the mornings, we'd get 5 or 6. And then during the afternoons, there was a lot more. It's not my bag, it's up to you guys.
Okay, I was just thinking of obviously how many children will be using it, you know, while school is on.
Yeah.
I understand in the afternoon when they kick out and they'll go to the splash pad. And I know it's a cost thing. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I suggest, rather than make a change right now, if we were to start on the basis you've seen here, and from day one, do an ongoing survey of how people are feeling about it, and then look at adjusting it quickly to match what people want, unless you think we can agree now on our discussion. It's really down to, don't you, Carl?
I think if we
if we look at putting it off now, it'll be put off till after summer. I can see that happening. We can collect the information to assess it next year, but I think we need to make a decision today, really, on what exact opening hours should be, just to get it done and get it moving forward. Especially if we think it's going to be earlier, or as it is previously. Working with a lot of vulnerable children and a lot of vulnerable families, it's actually a really nice thing for them to do in the summer. They drop their children off, they go get stuff sorted, and then they go back out for a day out with their younglings, and then manage to actually build up good relationships with them by, using things like the park and the splash pad during the summer. I think it's an asset that would be taken away if we weren't providing it at an earlier hour.
Right, John?
Well, Louisa, I think, stuck her hand up just before I did that.
I was just wondering, is it a case of staffing as well? Because I know we're quite tight up with the emergency staff at the moment.
We are.
So would that, 1 o'clock to 5, that's actually you can use the space in the mornings to use your staff?
It does. We have struggled to recruit A, staff of any ability, and B, staff of suitable quality. No one out there's got a splashback qualification. So we are training the guys up, but it's the training courses, because of the COVID thing, were obviously put off, and it's well into May before they will be fully trained. So myself and Dave are going to be working the splash pad.
Kev's also trained, isn't he? Kev.
Yeah.
It's just like pool plant qualifications.
Yeah.
And are those a necessity, because you could actually get others in to do tests if we needed to do that, rather than having to employ someone on the back. While we can't employ them, we could get someone to do those tests as necessary. Obviously, there's another cost there, but if you can't open it because you haven't got the staff, there's the opportunity to look at getting others to do that, because there are companies that will do that.
Thanks, Gary. Sue?
Thank you. And Sue Mortimer. I'm just looking at the days in April, and you've got 10 consecutive days where you're open 10 till 5. So you've obviously got the staff then.
Yes, that's me and Dave filling in when we haven't got anyone. Yeah. John.
Right. John.
I just want to come back to this. It's not used as much in the morning as it is in the afternoon. Anybody who works with kids will tell you that there are some kids that have social interaction challenges. So actually having quiet periods of use is a really good thing, because your ADHD kids, your Asperger's kids, your kids with social challenges, that's when they can go along and they can utilise it. And their behaviour isn't such that it causes distress or upset to others. And responsible parents, that's when they will be choosing to take them to use that. If we only open the splash pad when we think the splash pad will be busy, we will be making the choice to exclude those young people from being able to use the facility. Now, that might be what we say we need to do, but we will be making that choice because those people will not go and use it when it is busy. And I just go back to what we said when we were first putting that splash pad in, and the promises we made, and Councillor Aves is the only other person who was here then who was part of making those promises. But it was about giving opportunity for every young person in our community to be able to take advantage of things like that, not just in terms of providing a facility that was top class for those who can't afford to go off to posh holiday locations where these things are based, but also that every young person in our community had the ability to access that facility. And I really, 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 really do believe that is the promise we made. That is what we budgeted for. That is what we're supposed to have appointed staff for. We've got to deliver this. If we're not delivering this, we are letting our residents down.
Thanks, John. Carl, then Tom, then Gary.
Just to follow on from that, as well as children with a lot of SEND needs, there's also a lot of parents who have struggles with mental health, anxiety. So you're right what you're saying, John, those quiet times would be vital, because actually those children might never go to the splash pad, but even having 5 or 6 in the splash pad in that morning is better than those children never getting to experience it, because the parents will struggle going, and understandably so. But why should we need to give them that option to be able to have that opportunity?
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. Tom Price. Thank you, Chair. I don't think anyone in this room here would deny having a splash pad open longer. I think we're all aware the best thing would be to have the splash pad open as long as possible. But we need to make sure I think it's the wrong conversation to have right now. We know we want to have it open longer, where it's 10, 11 o'clock. Yeah, have it open longer all we want. We need to be realistic, and very much like you said earlier, John, I wouldn't like to say now, right, let's put forward to open at 10, everyone agrees, and then we don't actually have the staff to fulfill that, and then all we're doing is flooding our Facebook with apologies we can't actually fulfill what we promised. So unfortunately, it is a little bit putting on you, because I thought you were the only one here who had the knowledge or who could answer that. If we put forward to open, say 11 o'clock, as mentioned earlier, or 10 o'clock, is that realistic? Can we realistically push that? Because if we can, we should. But if we say now, can we open at 10 every day? Can we realistically promise that to our residents?
I will deliver it.
Yeah, I'll be able to. That's what I'll make sure. I don't want to promise we will, and then we won't. We need to make sure we have that in place.
Right. Thanks for that. Gary?
Yeah, I just agree with what John was saying, and with regard to young people, not just anyone with the SEN needs, but also for young children who are basically up at dawn and want something to do very, very soon. I'm still going back to that timetable of 10/11 o'clock rather than getting them at 9 o'clock, because children, unless they've got siblings, etc., or if they have siblings, they've got to go to school, and then they will be looking for something to do. So 10 o'clock/11 o'clock. Again, with the proviso, the budget is there, but the staffing has got to be sorted, because exactly as Tom said, we don't want to provide, say we're going to provide something and not do what we want to.
Thank you. It sounds then that there is support for making a change now around a 10 o'clock start. Sue?
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Sue Mortimer. I just think we're missing the point. This is the change that we're being asked for. The hours before, what we budgeted for, were the 10 o'clock start. That's what it was budgeted for. So we're not voting to make a change. We're voting not to accept the change.
Okay. Are we?
It's got an increase in hours.
So, okay. Well, if that's the case, then we go back to Carl.
I was just going to say, in that case, then can I propose that it stays as it is, 10 to 5, even on school days? And that be the option we've taken. Can I propose that?
I second.
Right. Okay. It doesn't stop us tweaking it further later, but if we're agreeing then, or we're going to vote on making that change from day one of the season, yeah? So could I have a...
Sorry, can I just clarify that? We're voting to make no change, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're voting to stick to... All right. Right. Okay, yes, we are agreeing days, we are agreeing times tonight, and that we are agreeing what you are asking for now. It's a bit academic whether it's different or...
Jack, can I make I can't make I'm not on the committee, but Carl might want to adapt this into the proposal that he made, that the council retains last year's schedule of opening, that is 10 till 5, Monday to Sunday, but that during this summer, we spend some time surveying use of the park and who is using it and why, so that for next year, a more detailed report could be brought forward with any suggestions. And I would like to ask, through you if I might, that report should come to this council before Christmas. We should be, because the budget will reflect the staffing required. So if we are going to say, actually, there isn't the need, we've spent this year, we've studied it, it transpires that is right, and councillors didn't know what they were talking about, and there isn't any proper use in the morning. It's entirely possible that could be the case. We haven't done the study. But what we need to do is do that study and bring something back to council before we set next year's budget. And so that actually this doesn't come the day after we've opened it, that we suddenly start talking about opening less than we did before. And I think that's the thing, particularly for me, comes as a real shock on this, that we open the splash pad and then say, but we want to open it less.
So I'm happy to adopt those amendments. Can I also add the amendment of what you were saying earlier, John, about staff looking and surveying the actual splash pad an hour earlier than opening times to make sure that there's nothing wrong with it.
So it opens on time.
Yeah. Is that an amendment we make with this now?
It's your motion, you can say it.
Yes. Sue.
Thank you. Sue Mortimer. I'm just wondering whether it's possible to have something in the motion to say weather permitting, because there are going to be times when it's like,
yes,
you know.
Yes, I think that's taken as read, isn't it? Is that stated? Are we going to make this clear in our policy? We need to. Yeah, I mean, perhaps, okay, if you're suggesting that, we could make sure it's restated when we announce opening times.
Well, 10 to 5 Monday to Sunday, weather permitting.
Yeah. So, right.
Can I just chip in?
Yeah.
We now have a dedicated section on the Town Council's Facebook page, which we will be using to update residents about the opening times. We will tell them each that we're going to set a deadline for when we notify them by. So they will, that day's opening or closing will be notified by 9 AM in the morning. And we'll also advertise it on our website. So we're hoping to shut down some of the criticisms we got last year for not being proactive enough in notifying residents of closures.
But will that include flexibility? Because you can have a weather forecast that says you're going to have a really dreadful day. Well, you have one that says it's going to be a stonking sunny day. We say it'll be open all day. By lunchtime, the heavens have opened.
Well, obviously, we would close it. We would close it then. Conversely, unfortunately, if you've made the decision to close by 9 AM, the amenities team will have been scheduled onto other jobs during the day. So it's unlikely that we could reschedule them. And I'm looking at Hugh here, from those jobs that easily.
I'd suggest that John Welling leisure and swimming pools, if you're making a decision at 9 o'clock, it's very unlikely that the decision on 4 hours of weather is going to, the weather change is going to happen so much in 4 hours, it can open again in the afternoon. You have to give it a timetable to enable amenities to do their job properly. So if you make that decision at 9 o'clock, it is going to close, it should close. Otherwise, you're going to have so much wasted labour hanging around to wait to see what to do. Also, my point was going to be that Hugh should make the decision on how soon they should open, do their pre-opening checks. Because they once they get into a plan, it could be that it takes 15 minutes to open or half an hour, but if you're going to make the decision at 9 o'clock, if that decision had already been made previously, that we're going to tell the public at 9 o'clock, someone's going to have to make that decision at 9 o'clock, either whether it's weather dependent or whether it's maintenance or an issue that's cropped up on inspection. So I'd suggest that that actually could go back to 10 o'clock if we can open it up, or I don't know, you're just going to have to, there's a bit of a quandary there. If you open, make the decision at 9 o'clock, that's it. It still could be a maintenance issue that closes it 15 minutes later. So it should be on the amenity team that made that after they've done an inspection.
I think 90% of what you just said, I 100% agree with Gary. But I'm sorry, you have days in the summer when it rains in the morning and it's gloriously sunny in the afternoon.
It's just, again, I'd say it's all about labour. It's how you move
But
labour.
sorry, with the greatest of respect, this council built into its budget 2 members of staff dedicated as park wardens with the main purpose of their job being running the splash pad.
Okay.
So we've budgeted it, we've got the staff for it, we've appointed the park wardens.
We only have one park warden at the moment.
Only one has been appointed, which is Reese.
We need to find another one then. Well, the budget is for.
So what we're doing, we're putting aside at the moment cost, and we're making an assumption that
The necessary staff will be employed. So if we put that to one side, let's agree on should we agree on the times and go with the proposal that Carl is making, which take Tom?
Tom Price, so, thank you, Chair. So I just need to clarify, I repeat myself, I understand, but before I vote, I need to understand all the information. And again, sorry, who? I just need to know in my head before I vote. Is this realistically and honestly deliverable at this time? If it is, that is fine, but we need to be really honest. We can't keep just shouting, open it at 10, open it at 10. We all wanted to open it at 10, but is it realistically deliverable at this time?
Not really, but I will make sure that it is hit from 10 till 5. There are things that potentially will not be done, but that will happen 10 till 5.
Other aspects of council that may be delegated to you guys may not be hit due to the splash pad opening at 10 because we don't have the current staff.
Yeah.
Partly due to splash pad training as well. Yeah.
But we will do that. That's fine.
So we'll go ahead on that basis then, Tom, yep?
For the clarify, I need to know that information.
So Carl, are you happy with what you're actually proposing now?
Yeah, I'm still happy.
Yep. Is everybody happy, or do you need a restatement? Sorry, you'd actually, could you put your hand up, Sue?
The only other cost that I can see would be an issue with the splash pad is the electricity, and we don't really know how much electricity is costing. I mean, we had a huge bill come through.
Yes, but we're saying that this is all budgeted for, aren't we, at the moment?
Well, we won't. The budget didn't look at a £24,000 bill for electricity for the King George V, and that's what's come through. I mean, we were basing figures on previous costs when there was no splash pad, from what I can see.
Right, this is complicating it a bit, or
You need to ask.
yeah, Hugh.
What's the question?
The cost.
What's the cost of running the splash pad electricity wise?
It's about 150 a day, irrespective of open or closed. That's fine. It's there.
Irrespective of open or closed.
Yeah.
So actually, the discussion about hours isn't going to impact that cost.
Stuff.
Yeah, no, but the point, just to clarify, Sue's concern was if we're opening it more hours, there's an increased cost to us because it's open more hours. But what you're saying is that £150 cost per day is there whether it's open or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
So actually open, yes, for 3 hours is not incurring additional.
Electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we've said that the staff cost is budgeted for anyway. So we don't have to let that figure in this decision now then. So do we need to restate the proposal?
Would you like me to read it out?
Could you? Right, let's do that.
To open the splash pad from 10 AM to 5 PM every day, retaining 2021 schedule of opening. During the course of this summer, to survey who is using the splash pad and why, in order to inform a more detailed report for asset management and amenities before Christmas as part of the budget setting process. Staff are to be in place an hour prior to opening time.
Do we want to make that a fixed hour, or is that really down to Hugh?
Right.
I think it needs to say a period, necessary or a period.
Prior to opening time.
Yeah. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Sue Mortimer. We are starting our budget process in November. I suggest, can we not have this report by the end of October?
We're actually starting budget process in August, September time this year.
Yeah, well, I just would like it moved forward from December, what you said, Christmas. We really need that information as soon as we can after the end of September. So I would put a deadline of the end of October.
Yeah, I agree.
Does everybody agree with that, Gary? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just on a different point, but I agree with that point.
Right. So if we concluded.
I'm loath to put October rather, because I think we'll be discussing it in September. So I'm going to put as part of the budget setting process.
Sorry, why? October? End of October?
But we're going to be starting the budget setting process earlier than October. So we'll need the report earlier than October. So I'm going to put a more detailed report to asset management and amenities as part of the budget setting process. Because if you say the end of October and Hugh produces it at the end of October, but we've already started the discussion in September, it's too late.
But we don't close the splash pad until end of September, do we?
But you need, if we're discussing the budget in September, starting that process, why put a time limit on when the report has to be ready? We need the report as soon as possible.
But we also need to get all the days in as well, to the end of the schedule, to get an overall view.
Okay,
To be honest, very few people are going to use it in September. We'll have the bulk of the info. We're doing hourly head counts, and by the end of August, we'll know.
And it's going to be happening there and then. So there will be information available at the start of the budget process. So can we phrase it something like?
I've put before the end of October, if that's what councillors want. It will be ready by the end of October.
Is everybody happy with that? Yes, and if we've got information prior to that, then that's a bonus. So.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that we were talking about the December, so I could, but as soon as possible, as soon as available, why don't we put that? I mean, I take your point, Patsy, that if we put a date at the end of October, that's when we're going to get it.
Yes.
I mean, really, these figures should all be available, just they will be daily, won't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they will be.
If we put that as a yeah, if that's the end point, and should we put something in there that says?
I'd have put as part of the budget setting process. So we go back to where I was, but
Okay.
we know what we've got to do.
And no later than.
Yes.
No later.
Yeah.
No later than end of October. Yeah. Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yep. So that's.
Sorry, can I just last thing?
Gary.
Just, what time are we letting the public know that the facility will be opening for the day? Will it be 9 o'clock or will it be after the?
It'll be by 9.
Yeah.
Right.
But I actually understand the point Gary's making here, which is that if your team turns up at 9:30 because there's a 10 o'clock switch on, and at 9:30 they find something's gone wrong with the chloride or something, you know, it happened last year. These things will happen. The issue will be if we said we'll tell you by 9 if it's open or not, and then at 9:45 put a post on saying, "Oops, sorry, it's closed now." I honestly think we ought to actually give your team a little bit more flexibility and say by 10. Purely because there will be residents out there, don't print this bit, but there will be residents out there who will leap on the opportunity of saying, you told us by now, it's now 10 o'clock and you've now closed it for the day, and we'd packed our bags and the picnic was ready and the kids are now bawling their eyes out because we, you know, it will happen. You've got to give yourself that, that space for.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah, Sue Mortimer. I would think the splash pad is going to be open. We only need to notify them if it's not going to be. And if it's not going to be, it will be because of an issue, you know, like with the testing or the weather. So I don't think you can actually put a time on it.
Well, people need to make their decisions of what they're going to do for that day by a given time. And if they're told by a certain time, so you need to tell them it's going to be by 10 o'clock, they'll make their decision. If we tell them at 10:05 that the testing's gone on, that's another thing, but you must give the public a definitive time you've got to go by.
yeah, but we can state that, you know, unless advised otherwise, which will be within whatever time we agree, the times will be as we publish.
Yeah, I assume the Facebook page will say, today, the splash pad is open between 10 and 5, unless someone goes in to change it. What we're saying is that normally someone will change it by 10 o'clock in the morning to help the public be able to plan their day around what is happening.
Yeah. Are you happy? Okay. Are you happy, Carl, to propose that? Happy to propose it?
Yeah.
Right. Everybody happy with what's being proposed?
Jack seconded.
So Jack seconded. All in favour, please. That's not unanimous.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Against, please.
2. I've got 8.
I didn't ask. Did I ask if anybody had any more questions?
I'm missing Simon. Yeah, that's fine. That's everybody.
Yep. Okay. Right. Thank you for that. Right. Now, lighting. You've probably seen, well, hopefully you've seen the lighting options. Now, I understand that the suggestion of lighting the park came up originally going back now 2 years. So I would suggest that one of the things we need to consider when we're considering these options is the base, going right back to basics and determining whether a lighting scheme is necessary in the park. So, comments, please. Gary.
No, still needed. Shouldn't be. I don't think it's within any question that we need lighting there. Safety, security, just for ambience, everything. The park needs lit up. It's very scary at times. It's also a beautiful place that needs to be lit up and could be lit up really well with the right lighting.
And we're now just talking about KGV, that part, our main park.
Yeah.
Yep. Pat.
I really caught up there, Gary. All the other things are very necessary, but ambience was the word that really stuck in my mind. That was the original, to make the park look attractive, pretty even, and to be able to change the lights with the seasons so that they have Christmassy lights and that we can change. You can change lights, can't you? You can do that. So yeah, so that we could change them and make them suit the seasons and the events. I mean, it was meant to have been an attraction, as well as all the other things.
Okay, Carl.
Did we not talk about there being lighting going up alongside the river and up down Murray Walk as well?
Yes, that's a slightly separate issue. We're talking at the moment purely about the park. Are we here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll come back to that in a moment. Yeah. Claire.
Yeah, I regularly walk through the park at night, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I find very few people up around the park that time of night anyway. But I think it's the one spot in Melksham where you can actually stand. The sky is absolutely fabulous from there. You get such a lovely view. And it's not dark. It's not pitch black in the park. There are worse places to walk along and worse parks to walk through at night, which are used more regularly as walkways. I actually think that lighting in there at night would be a real shame because it's such a peaceful park. You know, and personally, I find it quite non-threatening because the walkways are so good.
Yeah, Tom Price. Thank you very much, Chair. Slightly on what you just said as well, Claire. Now, if we need more lighting in the park for it to be safer and for people to feel they can use the park close at night to walk home or whatnot, that's what's needed. That's what's needed. I won't disagree with that at all. But we need to be careful not to be having these massive, bright, shining lights all throughout the park. It'd be very nice to maybe theme them and have some ambience and to show off our park, possibly. But it's important to remember also the wildlife in the area. We've got nocturnal animals in the area. We have hedgehogs, we have bats, we have fox, we have a lot of nocturnal animals and insects around. Insect population is diminishing a hell of a lot, and part of that is lighting in more rural areas and towns. So if we are looking at having lighting in the KGV, we need to ensure that we're having the correct lighting for the correct area that will put the wildlife and, you know, to increase biodiversity in our town, to put the wildlife, we need to bear that in mind, certainly. So I'm happy to have lights, but I don't want massive shining beaming bright lights to completely destroy some migration and feeding, hunting habitats of animals.
Thanks, Tom. John.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, Gary.
No, John, I'm deferred.
Yep. Okay, John first.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, this isn't the first time this council's talked about the lights in the park. Shut up. This isn't the first time this council's talked about the lights in the park. We talked about it, if I remember, at the December meeting of council, when we were in the Assembly Hall, when we agreed to spend the money on having the report done, and I assume this is the report that's come out from the spending of that money, with the suggestions and recommendations as to what could be happening. As I remember it, we were talking about low-level lighting in the park, so we weren't talking about street light type lighting. We were talking about low-level lighting that would light the paths but not light the park, if that made sense, and whether that was solar powered. And if I remember correctly, we had a couple of options on the table then, one of which was for it to be wired and one of which was it to be solared. And I know investigations and that will probably change with the work that's being done. I'm not trying to take us back to that. But the point is, it was low-level lighting that at that time, we all thought, what a good idea, because it makes it safe to walk around. And actually, I've walked through the park. I'm not a subtle person, but I don't feel safe when I walk through the park when it's dark. When I'm walking home and I go that route home, I've got 1 or 2 options to walk home. I don't feel safe walking through the park on my own. I don't feel safe walking through the park when it's just me and Nettie walking through there sometimes. Particularly if you've got groups of people around in the park and you can't really see who or what they are. So lighting on the paths to make the paths clearer and feel safer, I think would be a very, very good thing. Because if I don't feel safe, I suspect an awful lot of other people don't feel safe. So I hope we do proceed. My only ever thing on this was I wanted as much as possible that we utilised solar power, be it solar power on each light unit, or be it solar panel on the new build that fed through to wired lighting around the paths, but it was solar power driven rather than mains grid driven, because that's what fitted in with all of our ecological line that we have as a council, and quite rightly so.
Let's just take Tom's. Tom next. Oh, sorry, Gary. No, got to go to Gary now. Gary.
Just to answer a few comments made from other councillors. The park is our sort of shining beacon for the centre of our town. It should be lit. It's lit daily. During the day, it should be lit at night. I totally agree that it shouldn't be overlit, and we are looking at LED low-level lighting around the perimeter. If you want to stargaze, we do that in the middle. If you want to stargaze, but the security of our residents is a priority. And I feel there's a lot of people will not walk through the park because it is dark. And as I said, I don't think it's really this discussion really today was about which budget we're going for, not whether having lights or not. So that's what we left the last meeting for. Those lights, those figures you've got there is really what types of light we're looking at, and let's make a decision.
I will say that I didn't recall low-level lighting being the thing here, and these are not low-level. There are standards. Low-level lighting is susceptible to vandalism.
So these are like street lights.
They can be shorter, but yeah, there'll be street light type. But there's options on the amount of illumination, the colour of illumination with the LED controls, etc. Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. Tom.
Thank you. Tom Price. Thank you, Chair. Hugh, do we have at this time any idea how much the hardwired lights would cost to run?
Yes, we do. £150 a year for all of them.
The hardwire.
The hardwired.
Yeah.
150 quid a year, and that's
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
LEDs are wonderful technology.
Yeah. So
Carl's got to stand up.
So one question I had about the hardwired, would the park need to be taken up at all, and would the park be out of action? And if so, for how long if the hardwired was to go in?
Okay, so you'll probably be aware we've got a horseshoe of hardwired capability at the moment with draw pits around the top of the park to complete that ring for the hardwired system. I'm just guessing, a couple of weeks' work. Would the whole park need to be out of action? No, it would just be a trench around the bottom edge of that path.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Hugh will actually comment perhaps. With the, let's say we have whatever lights, but they're to a standard we're happy with. What is the CCTV like throughout the actual park? So I know, for example, the solar lights, they're possibly there for vandals, but also the solar panels themselves could easily be stolen. I know that's something that happens actually quite regularly, these kind of things. How is our CCTV throughout the park? Have we got enough CCTV that will cover the whole of the park, or do we be able to see anything and everything that could potentially happen?
No.
We need to be realistic there, because it's, you get a lot of money for them.
The modern CCTV needs a lot less lighting than it used to. So I would say that if we get the lighting level right for people to feel safe, that will be enough for cameras.
Do we have the cameras? Sorry, we have enough cameras that would,
Well,
at this time.
we haven't got as far as planning that, but we could, that could be planned, taking that into account. Yeah. So Gary.
Yeah, just on the costs, etc. We've got two costs in front of us: 43 for solar and 81 for wired. But the council's green policy would, I would have thought we would be looking as a council to look for the renewables and solar, etc., rather than even £150 cost. The difference in the cost is £38,000. If you're looking at batteries running out every 8 years, that's going to take a century for us to get that money back for those, at least, I would have thought, if we are going to replace the batteries every 8 years. It's literally double the bill, and then you're going to have a cost every 8 years. It seems a no-brainer to me. And again, I'm looking at the green side of things. Let's use solar. Let's use the best that we can for the budget we got, whether they have to be slightly higher or whatever. But what we wanted was lighting first. That now can be good ambient lighting around there, and we're fulfilling a green option as well.
Yes. I mean, I would think we could get that balance right, the lighting level right, together with solar. We just need to agree what that's going to be. So who's next? John? John.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just getting over the shock of those figures. So it's twice as much for the cabled option than for the solar option.
Sorry, John, if I can just get in there, there's £32,000 worth of groundworks. So the luminaires and the columns are broadly similar, because they're both using LED lights, and they're both columns, and but the groundworks to complete that horseshoe is 32.
So just a couple of questions off that, if I might. First of all, on the solar, are we confident that the batteries that would sit within the solar lights would carry enough charge to last the night? Particularly during winter months, because they will during the summer, we all know that, but in the winter, when they've had 2.5 hours of decent electric charging time during the day, are they going to run out by 9:30? And
that's the $1 million question. All manufacturers would say, yes, of course it will last.
Well, I'm sure our consultants will be able to talk about ones that have been in place elsewhere and what's happened. That's what we were paying them for.
Yeah.
And what have they said?
Yeah, they're confident that they should last the night. Don't forget, both these sets of lights have got absence detection on. So, and what that means is that if there's no one in the park, the light level drops, and then it drops again. So there's 3 levels. So if no one's in there, they'll run at 30%. If somebody's in there, they'll brighten up, then they'll go down to 66 and then down to 30.
Okay. So if the consultants and now hang their hat on it, because that is, I think, what we would have to expect them to do, are confident that these things would last the night, then I think the other question I would have asked would be about putting solar onto the pavilion or onto the new build and feeding out to a wired solution from that. But we're going to be talking about creating an incredible cost to spend money for the sake of it. So I would think Gary's absolutely right. If they can guarantee that the charge will last the night, even the cost of replacement of batteries would mean that it would take an awful long time for the solar to be less financially viable than the.
It is easier now for the experienced manufacturers to forecast how long light's going to last on a charge.
Can I ask one other follow-up, Chair, then I promise I'll shut up, because it was on that exact point. And what it was, of course, you said we've got a horseshoe that is got ducting in place.
Yeah.
And then a stretch that hasn't.
Yes.
Okay, so if there is even the beginning of an element of risk with regards to the solar ones and their longevity in terms of powering for the night, and bearing in mind the safety concerns that many of us have and want this lighting in for, is there an option that says we put solar where there is no ducting and we hardwire where there is ducting? So we could guarantee one route will always have power, because that solar where there is ducting, sorry, that hardwire where there is ducting, you'd probably only need to put one panel on the roof of the pavilion or on the new build to generate the power that could run those lights for the night anyway. And then they're on a hardwire, so if that power went down, it's just going to pick it up off the grid. Just throwing that out there as an option that you might want to consider.
It's actually like a hybrid. Yeah,
Because you're not going to spend £31,000 on the new duct.
that's right, yeah.
But
Now, that's a good, really good point, John. Sue.
Yeah, I was just looking at the disadvantages really of the solar one. And yeah, largely really due to solar panel, vandalism and removal of solar panels. Requires enough sun to top up solar batteries. The lifespan of the batteries and the vegetation will interfere with solar capability. Just thought that's quite a lot of disadvantages.
So, yeah, that is in the report.
Yeah, so we've got to take that into account. Tom?
Thank you, Councillor Price. Yeah, actually, John basically said about it anyway. It was about, yeah, we say it's an extra £40,000 for the hardwired. But if these solar panels don't actually work, then it doesn't matter what you spend, because we've wasted people's money on lighting that isn't suitable for the park. But if the manufacturer has said that they will be viable for any weather, no matter what, they'll be absolutely fine all year round, do we have some kind of guarantee or some kind of insurance that they will do that? So if we come up to them in a year's time and say, you've told us they're going to be all year round, we've had X amount of days, months, whatever, where it hasn't worked because of British weather as expected. Can we get into that for that? Can we have some kind of understanding where, well, you owe us money because you've misled us here?
We will have to come back to you on that, Tom. That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue Mortimer. I think Tom's question is probably answered by the advantage of that is given for the non-solar system, and where it's guaranteed lighting in any weather conditions, which to me means the other one is not.
Yes, I would think guarantees were a little difficult, but there are some very realistic forecasts, and I would suggest that we need to scrutinise those. So we will need to look at the lighting levels, because I imagine, I mean, they're talking about 23 solar lights here, which sound quite a lot to me, but personally, I think, but they were looking at, I guess their brief was to light the park.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily to take into account the ambience of the park as well as safety. So maybe we need to look at that as well. So, Carl.
I was just going to say, do we have a dedicated time frame for this? Because it seems like we've come up with a lot of other ideas to contribute to lighting and other factors that we want to include in those quotes that we could possibly get, and maybe it might open up you to more options because of what's been said today. If we're still looking at reaching a deadline when we want these lights to go in by, is it worth adding that information and getting additional quotes to meet that?
It does seem from the variety of comments that we need to do quite a bit more. John first and then Gary.
I was say, Jack, I think what we need to do is we need to clarify exactly what it is that we want. Because I'm confused. I never thought that we were going to be talking about lighting the whole park at night, floodlit style. I thought we were talking about lighting the paths. So and I thought we'd even had discussions before about sort of low level ones and all the rest of it. Clearly, we didn't do that in the appropriate way. We haven't got that here. If that is what council wants, that's what we need to go and get a price for, because we don't know the relationship between what we've asked for and in terms of what we've got on this report and what it is actually maybe what members want. I was shocked by the price because of the sheer quantity of lights that are involved. But that makes more sense to me now if what we've got is something that will light the entire park and not something that will just light the circular path running around.
It is just the path. It's not the entire park.
83 lights.
So 23.
Oh, 23. So they're very expensive lights then. £2 a piece.
No, you got 30 grand for the 23.
30 grand for the 23.
That's just the lights.
Yes. Right, Sue, next, Gary, then Gary. No, Gary?
Yeah, I a couple of comments. One was John mentioned and Hugh said that there is partly a trench with a wire or available for wires to go down. And you're saying it's £32,000 to complete that trench.
Complete the ring, yeah.
I find that very expensive indeed. But
I'm shocked.
That's, you know, it's shocking. I just going to be interested to find out where these lights are, but also whether, just so we know, we see a lighting plan of the park before we make the decision, because it is key that it isn't overkill. It was the perimeter, that's it, and just see the full scope of the lighting plan.
Right.
And my last point is here, timeframes. We're coming into spring and summer, so it's going to be light till 10 o'clock. Most evenings now till September. So there is scope for us to actually bring this back again when we've got some more information.
I'm going to suggest that a small group get together and with Hugh, we look at this again, but obviously we can use what we've got as a starting point. So I think that's the only way forward to avoid making a mistake here. Carl?
Councillor Houghton, so sorry, Chair, that was actually going to be what I was going to suggest, is that we actually utilise the Parks Working Group, because we had a really good meeting during the virtual hub, putting specs together for that. I feel like we could equally have a positive meeting during the Parks Working Group to put specs together for what we would like these lightings to be, and I don't know whether that would work, but putting that to those forward in a similar fashion.
Yeah, John?
I think that's a cracking suggestion, Chair. That's because I think that what's not clear at the moment is why do we want the lighting? And that will answer whether we want the high level, low level, intermediate level. In my head, I was thinking about the sort of lighting we have on a caravan club site. Sorry to be nerdy, but you know, you have it at the power points, they're spaced probably, you'd have one at that end of the building and one almost as far away again over there, with just enough light coming out from them so you can see where you're going, you can see what's around you, but it's certainly not creating a daylight feeling at all. That's very different to something that's lighting it up to bright light. So I think we need to clarify what I want doesn't matter, it's what council wants that matters. But I have a feeling there isn't a collective view of what it is that we want to get.
Okay, let's propose. Can we have a proposal then to put that to the Parks Group to relook at lighting? And perhaps we ought to also include in that Murray Walk, which Carl quite rightly says we discussed and hasn't progressed any further. So, okay, proposed by Carl, seconded by Gary.
You've got a timeline on it, Chair.
Well, what would be
I'd really like to get this stuff in the ground for September. I really would. So we're ready for the clock.
Right. Okay.
If you don't mind me looking on here, I'll find out for you. June 27th.
Yes, you need to do it by then.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have 22nd of August as your one after that. And if you've not made your minds up by then.
So should we say those sort of mid-May, beginning of May, for the park working group to meet up?
To bring recommendations to the next meeting, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so that's the proposal, seconded by Gary. Now, Sue, have you got Hannah?
Yeah, I was just going to say that the lead time for the solar one is 5 to 6 weeks, and that's probably going to be more than that. So you will actually have to make a decision at the next meeting if you want to go by September.
Yeah. Okay, so show of hands, please. Unanimous. Right. Thank you for that. Right. Okay. So, Parks Working Group to receive a report from Head of Operations about next steps and approved course of action recommended in connection with the consultation for parks. Hugh.
Okay, in February half term, I took a couple of groups of councillors round the parks to have a look at our provision now. This was prompted by a visit that myself and Linda did some months earlier, whereby we went round on a beautiful sunny day and we found that there were very few people using our park facilities. So I thought it was important that the councillors had a look themselves at our estate of play areas, if you like. And to that end, I mean, I've had bits back from Sue and various others, but I think we need to take it to the next stage now, because the Parks Working Group was to look at all of the parks within the town and not just focus on the KGB, which has been one of the issues in the past. So my initial thoughts, and you can shoot me down if you like, was to have the Park and Playground survey to speak to the users of the parks, and maybe the councillors within their, using the play areas in their wards, hold a surgery on some weekend days and speak to the people who are using those facilities. Now, on discussion with colleagues, I've also realised that it's not just the park users we want to be consulting with, it's the non-users. And why do people not use our facilities? So we need to spread the consultation far and wide, get it in the min, get it on all our social media channels, create a bit of a conversation about it. And what do you want to see? Do we have the right provision? It may be that some parks that were put in at various housing estates 20 years ago are now irrelevant because there's no one of that kind of age group living in that area anymore. And that could be why they're not being used. Our equipment is maintained, but it is in some of the outlying parks not particularly exciting. You go to KGV and you see, plenty of activity in the new play area there with the new equipment, but we saw very few people on any of the other facilities.
Right, thank you. John.
Cracking idea, 100% support. Just to build on that a little bit, I couldn't agree with you more. The thing that I was stopping myself from shouting out as you were introducing that is, we don't need to talk to the people who are using the parks. We need to talk to all those people who aren't using the parks. So anything we can do to reach out to them. And that will involve, I think, as going to mother and toddler groups, as working with the Children's Centre, who are working with so many, and particularly the outreach workers at the Children's Centre who are working with so many of these families, talking to certainly the juniors club that we've got for youth, because that age, the years 5 and 6 at primary school, they're still going out and using playgrounds, talking to older young people, getting into the school, trying to talk to the school about the older kids, what they're looking for, and even, dare I say it, as just going out and knocking on some doors and talking to residents, particularly those who are living closer to play areas, to find out what the issues they feel about them are, and what they would want to see. But yeah, we've got to go out and we've got to talk to people, and we've got to get as wide-ranging a set of responses back to it as we possibly can. This might include, Pat, you'll remember when we were doing the park consultation, we had all the questionnaires and teams outside at the supermarkets, talking to people going into the supermarkets and coming out. That's where you're going to capture people, that's where you're going to talk to people. I think this needs to be a fairly lengthy campaign, 2 or 3 months, to really give time to get a good response, and to do that in a coordinated fashion. So we've got it online, we've got it in the press, we've got it in our supermarkets, we've got leaflets downstairs people can take, and get some real feedback from people about what it is that they're looking for.
Thank you, John. So, a draft questionnaire for us to comment on would be a good move. Yep.
I was actually just going to comment on the draft questionnaire that's in the agenda pack. So just with I love it. I love the idea. I love everything about it. One thing I was going to add to the survey, and I know it's just a sample, could we have a tick list of what parks they use the most? So we got an idea of which parks are getting used more so than others. And I know KGV will be top of that list, but it'll give us a good idea for other parks also.
Right, Pat, yes, Pat?
Thanks. And I think it might be a good idea if we as councillors went and had a look at other parks in the area as well. I mean, there's no need for us to go around in little groups. We could do this on our own or with 1 or 2 other friends like me and Sue, troop around together sometimes. We could just go and look at another park, come back with a report for the others. But I think we need to look and see what other towns are doing and what makes their parks better or not so good or whatever, and look for some ideas there as well.
Right. Thanks for that. Gary?
Yeah, I'm just on the survey, and I know a great percentage won't, but put their names on there. But again, if you can put postcodes where they live, so you've got a good idea of where who's using it.
Thank you. Good idea. John?
Yeah, 2 things on that. One of them is, I haven't seen the draft survey, apologies, but can I strongly suggest that we, if we haven't already, it might be you have done, in which case apologies, but we actually talk to a manufacturer or something. They will have examples of this sort of thing that has been done elsewhere in terms of surveys, the questions to ask, because we don't know what we don't know. And we can ask lots of really intelligent questions about the equipment that we've got, but we need to be exploring what's outside of the box that we know about. And I think that going to one of the equipment providers, maybe the people who provided the stuff in the park, they've just had a lot of money out of us. they will have play consultants. They'll be able to look through your questionnaire. They'll be able to come up with perhaps some questions we haven't thought about, or say, actually, you can ask that question, but you're not going to get anything useful. I can't critique it. I wouldn't have a clue what I was talking about. But I think it would be really good if we ran it past somebody who did, so that we get as much really useful intelligence back from it as possible. The one other thing on that, Chair, I was going to say, is picking up and building on the point that Gary made about give us your postcode. The other thing that we could actually do on this is, particularly if it's an ongoing campaign we're going to be doing and we want people to be involved and to have ownership and to partake in it, is to say to them that we can ring fence their participation. So tell us who you are. We're not going to ask you about anything else other than play areas. Tick this box if you want to know what else the town council is doing. But otherwise, we're only going to talk to you about the play areas. But we want to, because the really important thing on this is, if we do this properly, we're going to do a survey. We're going to get lots of feedback from people. That's all going to go in a big mixing bowl. It'll get stirred up. We'll come out with some ideas. If we really want to do it properly, what we want to do then is go back to the people who fed in and said, this is what you've told us, this is what we think. What do you think? And we won't be able to do that if we don't know who they were. We could go back to the world in public, but the problem is, and again, if you're going to print this, try and print it nicely, Ben. The trouble is that there will always be people out there who will just want to complain about whatever the council does. They've never voted in their lives. They probably don't pay council tax. I'm being terribly un-PC here, but they would definitely complain about anything the council does. We can put out proposals and we'll be told we're wasting money. If we go back to the people who fed into the consultation, said, this is important to us, we can go back to them and say, well, this is what we've done in response to that. What do you think? And they could say to us, no, you've not heard what we said. And we might have got it wrong. And we can respond to those people who have partaken. Doesn't exclude everybody else, but we can actually make sure we've done some active listening. And active listening means that you feed back to them what you've heard. We can only feed back to them if we know who they are. And if we can give them that reassurance that their contact details would be ring-fenced purely for the consultation, then I think people might be willing to say who they are to be able to take part in that second stage.
There'll probably be some good examples where this has been done successfully elsewhere as well, which we can
and our consultants will be able to tell us that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Sue.
Yeah, I agree with what John's been saying. It's, need to get out there. I think the surveys need to go into the schools as well. There's a nice basketball sort of like area at Bower Hill, and it's got a nice slide in there as well.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that is one that we could use as an example, because I go up there quite a lot of visits on community work. And whenever I go up there, there's always people there kicking a ball about or putting in the basketball, you know, and it's very well used. I just think that's quite a good one we could use as an example. And I think we need to get people to take ownership of the park as regard to litter and things like that and vandalism. I think we need to get people to know that it's their park and it's their area. And remember what else I was going to say now. Yeah, the survey, is that for one particular park? Because I think if you're going to do it for the whole lot, it's going to get.
What it will be a green space survey, so that we know we cover the whole area to find out what people, how they would like to see that space.
I'm just thinking like if we're going around like in the forest ward and we've got the parks in the forest ward, wouldn't it be better if we did a survey of those for the people that are using those?
Well, I think, right, well, this is the detail we really need to, the group needs to come up with the criteria for a survey, and a template that we can actually comment on and then adopt, I think, before we.
And I just think that different
Yeah.
parks need different needs. We don't want to park like we've got at the top of the park at all the other parks, because we won't come to that one, will we?
No, very quickly, Tom.
Thank you, Councillor Price. I want to build on a little bit what Carl said, well, to be honest. It was on talking about play equipment. He said have a list of each park people are visiting. Also, it's very important to list the age groups of that, because I know, for example, in my area, we have a school park right next to me, and I would hazard a guess that no one over the age of 5 is given. It's a very much a toddler's park. So really make sure we understand what age groups are going to what parks, and then maybe we can have more specialised parks for our town. There's certain things we need to make sure we iron out, and we're not just having a blanket survey. So maybe even partly what Sue has brought in then. We need to make sure it can be quite specific.
I'm sure when John supported the looking at this on a wider basis, I'm sure he wasn't suggesting we exclude specific information on park users. So any survey should also take into account the views of people already using parks, but primarily increasing the number of people who generally increasing their awareness of parks and getting their views primarily as well as the existing users. Yeah, and as you say, it should include ages as well.
Yeah.
Gary.
Just reiterate what John said about literally the marketing of the survey. More information that we can gather. If you don't get it on the initial survey and you want it afterwards, you'll never have the opportunity again unless you resurvey the whole thing. So, the more you offer them at the inception of it all, the more they've got the opportunity to fill in. If they don't fill it in, they don't. But if you don't offer it, they won't. Simple as that. Park suppliers, again, agree. We've got a supplier who supply KGB with a lot of equipment, so it's a perfect opportunity. There's also Playforce on Bower Hill, which supply nationally to literally hundreds and hundreds of schools, and they're in on Bower Hill. So it's a perfect.
I think they've moved.
Have they moved?
Yeah.
No, they were
at Bower Hill.
Okay.
Yeah, it's time you just still on the building. So
I think we've got enough.
Sorry.
I think we've got enough information to get a draft out so that.
Yeah, and my last part was again, which parks do you use, which is, and then
Oh, yes.
comment on any other park that they use as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Primary park and any other I would
Yep.
suggest as questions.
Yep. Okay. Last question then from John.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, Jen, that I think that you're never going to form a questionnaire by committee. You need to have a small little group that will put that together, and you've got a park working group for that.
Yeah.
But a point I really wanted to make was, I almost believe when doing this, we should forget what parks we do have, forget what facilities are in those parks, and actually ask our residents, what do you want? Tom made a really, really good point, which was about, a particular park that's more for infants. You've got that in Primrose, you've got the infants area, then you've got the older area. You could say on Campion, you've got Spring Meadows and Campion too, similar. I think we really need to get to what do our residents want, and then how can we work out how we can meet their needs. We're not going to be able to do it all on day one, but we need to have a programme of what we're trying to achieve, and that's what this survey can tell us. And we might be shocked by what people say, because it might actually be that people don't want what used to be called the inters play areas anymore, which is the stuff for kids aged from 8 to 13. Because the world has changed and they go out and do other things now. And the ones older than that, they don't go and play on road stations. They want youth shelters now that they can sit in and, and those infant ones, might want. So we really need to, I think we've got to not look back at what we've got and say, how can we make what we've got better? We need to say, what do you want? And then we can investigate how we can adapt and change what we've got to meet what people are asking for.
I think there's a good example of a starting point for that, John. So we'll make sure the group is aware of that, because there are some good surveys that have approached it in exactly that way. Thank you for that. So I think we've probably done that, gone as far as we can with that. So we've agreed that the park working group will address this, have we, as well? Okay. Any other? We really ought to finish there, unless anybody's got anything really, really pressing. I think we've covered everything there. Okay, item 8, disposal of assets. Hugh has prepared a list for us to consider and hopefully agree. Do you want to run through that, Hugh?
Yeah, certainly. We, due to various improvements and additions to the council's inventory, we've got a few bits and pieces that are surplus to requirements or towards their end of their useful life. And what prompted this, and I know it's been discussed before, is the cherry picker. And by and large, as a council, we don't use it, but the Christmas lights guys do. And that's its main, has been its main purpose. Since I've been here, I've used it twice. Once to shut that middle window because it had gone too far up, and once to prune a tree to clear some foliage from around a CCTV camera. But that's pretty much it. Paul Weymouth has been looking after the cherry picker for us at his yard for, I think, probably the last 6 years. He's money maintaining it and keeping it in working order, but he's now bought his own. And so I thought this is probably a good idea to bring some of the other bits and pieces that we've got to the table and just check people's appetite to see whether they'd like to dispose of them, and maybe we could ring fence any funds gained for specific items of equipment. The bits and pieces you can see on the list there. So we've got the cherry picker, double stainless steel sink, cameras from the AV install that were hung from the roof in here, a couple of scrubbing machines. We've got an old wooden trailer, a Bowser, which is on a trailer, and we do use a different scheme now for the watering. And there's probably a few other bits and pieces, but essentially I'm asking, what do you think?
So who's right, Pat? Yeah, thanks you.
Don't the Bloom team need a Bowser?
They've got one.
I just remember some confusion about one being used a few weeks ago. I wasn't sure what happened about that.
I think it was moved out of the shed during the Christmas period, and it's back there now.
Oh, right. So the Bloom team are okay?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. This one's towable, this Bowser, and it's what we used to drag around the town watering the flowers.
Okay. We don't need any more.
John.
If we are going to be looking at these asset disposals, can I ask that first port of call is whether any voluntary or community groups in the area could make use of this equipment before we look at commercial disposal? I mean, the first thing you said when you said Bowser, the number of times we've been talking about trying to raise money for Bloom or whoever to have a Bowser, Sherman Fields or whoever. I really do feel that if there's community groups who could use any of this equipment, similar to the scheme that Wiltshire Council did when they closed down a lot of their premises, they just published a list of all the kit that was available. Jack, do you remember you and I going over there with Kerry and trailing through that primary school where we were saying, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have that. I think that if there's any way you can endear yourself to the community, it's by kit that we no longer use, but they could be made available. And whilst I recognise that this would be able to bring in some small level of income, I think probably by the time you factor in all the staff time involved in trying to sell it, it's probably going to cost us to dispose of. rather than just give it away to somebody.
Might find a home for the Bowser, actually. I've just,
Councillor Price, thank you. If you forgive my ignorance slightly of this, this may be a very silly question, but I'll ask it anyway.
Never stop me, Tom.
I didn't want to say anything, John. I mean, who am I to say that what we need, what we need, what we don't know? You obviously understand the situation very well, Hugh, so I have no reason not to trust on that. Is there anything on here that we can make it? I don't know how it works, if there's an appetite for it out there. For example, a cherry pick, I'm not too sure who has it and who would use it. But is there anything that we can rent out to have some kind of income for the council? Is that not something really that would make anything, or we're allowed to do, or be worth our time?
I think due to its age, it probably wouldn't be very favourably rentable.
Yeah, that's right.
But it is worth about £5,000 as it sits.
So I've got a question and a follow-up question if possible, Hugh. So the initial cameras from the initial AV system, is that the AV system that went wrong, or is that the AV system that we had originally? Before we had, well, because we didn't, did we have cameras previously? No. Okay, so that answers that question. Just to follow up from that then, I can't remember if we decided whether we were going to take any further action or not with that previous AV system. If we choose to, would it be handy to have the cameras on standby for proof if needs be to demonstrate that? Just because
I think it's a little late now because the system's completely dismantled. At the end of the day, we didn't pay for the entirety of the system. We've already sold some of it in lieu of the system that we're using at the moment. And the cameras they are very good cameras, and they're probably worth new price is about 1,300 quid each. So it'd be worthwhile. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got any time?
Sorry, Councillor Price, sorry, just one more, almost a matter, but for my own curiosity. So let's say ideally, I think the best thing, like John mentioned, pass it on to community groups if they have a use for it. But if we do decide to sell it, does that money just go into the general reserve? Is there a certain pocket that money is going to go to?
I think it'd be nice if we could identify something that we'd like to do with it.
Okay. Well, so almost like you go and sell it and you come back to our next asset meeting and say we have this money we've raised.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just ask John's suggestion about giving giving stuff away? Are we going to? Is it reasonable to put a price limit on that so that we see something from this, John?
Just to stress, Jack, as I did say when I started it, I haven't seen the list. I don't believe we should give 1,300. I can't read that from here, it's sensible. I don't think we should be giving £1,300. No, I don't need to see the list to say it. What I'm saying is where there are things that were coming to end of life, which is what you were talking about, that sort of stuff can pass on. If we've got brand new bits of kit, then I think, things like the water bowser, I can see so many community groups who could make use of that. And what you could sell it for, I don't think would justify the time we spend doing it. Not when you think of the community benefit that we get from, especially because we'll probably have grant applications from them asking us to buy them one, we'll sell something and then give a bigger one for someone else to. But things like brand new equipment that was being put in and is no longer used, obviously we need to attract the best market price for things like that.
Yeah. And a cherry picker.
Yes, I mean the situation with the cherry picker changes every time I hear about the cherry picker, so I'm just not going to go there.
You may want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, I mean,
there is a liability act.
I mean, there are ongoing costs associated with the cherry picker, such as the insurance and the inspections, what have you. Paul from Christmas Lights has maintained it and kept it going over the last 6 years, new batteries, hydraulics, tyres, that kind of thing. I think there was a discussion, and I think it predates me, that we were going to transfer it to him for £1. He's never charged us rent for keeping it at his yard. I don't know, what do you guys think? He doesn't need it now because he's bought the new one of his own. So any proceeds that we do get from it to go to Paul.
Put it on Amazon,
Yeah.
see what you get.
He has,
Rebate or
Paul has put money into keeping it in legal and working order.
I think, Chair, there would be a huge problem with us saying we'd flog it and give the money to somebody else. I don't think there would be a problem with us saying we'd flog it and use the proceeds to make a donation to the Christmas lights project, because that's within. But I don't think that we could flog an asset of this council for. You could say you're selling it to an individual for £1 because the arrangement you've come to gives us best value for the council. We have a legal duty to attain best value in anything we can do, but we are allowed to take account of social worth in doing that. So you could have done an arrangement where he had it, this is what I was expecting to hear, he had it for £1, but it would be available for the council to use and will continue to do the Christmas lights, which was its original intention for years to come. But actually, if that's no longer the case, then I don't think we could give it to or give the proceeds to a commercial interest. But certainly we could make a donation to the Christmas lights.
certainly, and Paul, just to follow on from that, Paul has said we can use his new one whenever we need to call on it. So it's just like he has done with ours.
Tom.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Thank you. It does seem it's a little bit difficult to decide right now what we want to potentially look at giving to community groups, or what we want to sell without having any idea, one, who could use it, and two, the price of anything. I don't like putting stuff off, but it does seem very difficult to make a decision right now. Would it be worth pursuing a price for everything, and then potentially looking at what community groups could want something, bring that to the next asset amenities meeting, and then we actually have there and then we can decide, well, we could get £5 for this, or a community group wants this for, and then we can make a decision there and then. It feels we should have that, we could have that information beforehand.
I've had a look at various online sites, and that's those items listed there about £8.5 altogether. Yeah. Below 500, the wooden trailer, the scrubbing machines, the double stainless steel sink. So those are sort of end of life items.
And everything else is worth £500 or more.
Yeah.
How many other items are there?
3.
Sorry, do we know how much the balance was? That's the way one that was potentially affected of interest.
1,000.
For what, sorry?
The Bowser.
The Bowser.
And I've seen, sorry, the AV system and check they've got the two more expensive items.
There's a couple of grand there.
Yeah, again, like then for the AV system, we're going to want some money for it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion for a proposal you could put out, right? Because otherwise this is just going to keep bouncing back, which is that one of you will need to move this, I can't, that you instruct the head of operations to go ahead and commercially dispose of the cherry picker and the electronic equipment, if I can call it that. There might be cameras and the deliveries, jobbies and all the rest of it. But the Bowser and other items that are below £500 re-advertise as being available for community clubs to bid for if they wanted. Bid for in terms of the community benefit there would be for them having it, not financially. And let's see, because I know that the Bowser's potentially worth £1,000, but I think that it could transform some of our stuff around the town if someone had a really good use case for it. If the bid that came in was obviously it was an inappropriate piece of equipment for what they wanted, then we can address that. But they can just apply on, almost on a grant application form for any one of those pieces of equipment. We can put a thing out in the bin with it on, put it on our website, photo of each item, and just ask people to bid for it in terms of social worth. What's the community benefit from them having that? And if people want it, great. And can I suggest that we just delegate to Hugh to get them in and make a decision?
I'm happy to propose that.
Proposed by Claire, seconded by Sue. All in favour of that approach? Thank you. Unanimous.
Thanks for that. Right, okay, we need to now go into confidential session. So,
Oh, Ben's got it.
So we need to make a resolution to that effect. So I propose that from the chair, seconder.
Yeah.
Yep, all in favour? Thanks. Okay,
So I'm just going to end the Zoom recording.
cheerio, Ben.
Goodbye,
Thanks, Ben.
everybody.